The broken signal *, the distress signal, was weak and broken, a whisper lost in the noise of deep space. Captain Ryan Carter sat in the pilot seat of his cargo ship, Dust Runner, staring at the blinking red icon on his console. He had passed by thousands of signals before, most of them junk leftover codes from wrecks, pirates, or ghost satellites. But this one felt different. Origin unknown. The ship's AI said in a calm voice. Biological life signs detected. Ryan leaned closer to the screen, tapping keys slowly. The signal came from a small asteroid belt on the edge of the Solaris sector, a dangerous place where law didn't reach. He had a shipment to deliver in 2 days, but something made him pause. He zoomed in, and a chill ran down his spine. The pod was spinning slowly, barely holding shape, metal torn and melted on one side. And inside, barely visible, was a figure. Small, curled up, unmoving. Ryan sighed, rubbed his forehead, and turned the ship. "Dust Runner, reroute," he commanded. "Let's go help someone," as the ship approached the escape pod. Ryan grabbed his suit and helmet, preparing for vacuum entry. He wasn't a soldier anymore. But his body still moved like one. He latched onto the pod, forced open the emergency seal, and stepped inside. The air was cold and heavy, a faint blue. Light pulsed from the pod's floor. And a strange smell hung in the air, metal mixed with something sweet. And then he saw her. She was no older than a teen by human standards. Blue skin faintly glowing in the dim light. Her long silver hair was stuck to her face, and her body trembled as she huddled in the corner. She looked up at him with glowing eyes, wide and terrified. She raised one hand weakly and whispered something. He didn't understand the language, but her tone pierced his heart. "Please," she said again, softer, like a dying candle. Ryan didn't speak. Just moved forward slowly, hands open, no threats, no weapons. He crouched near her, and she flinched. "Easy," he said gently. "I'm not here to hurt you." She blinked, confused. Then dropped her head in exhaustion. Her body was fragile, too thin, like she hadn't eaten in days. Ryan lifted her in his arms carefully and carried her back through the airlock. Once inside the ship, the AI scanned her. Species unknown, it said. Vital signs weak. Dehydration severe. Ryan placed her on a medical bed and began working quickly. He wrapped her in a thermal blanket, gave her water through a dropper, and cleaned the dried blood from her arms. Every movement made her flinch. But she didn't resist. She was afraid, but not of pain, of him, of being seen. As she began to drift into sleep, her eyes fluttered open one last time. "Why?" she asked in a broken whisper. "Why help?" Ryan didn't have an answer. He just looked at her for a long moment and said, "Because someone had to." Later that night, Ryan sat alone in the cockpit, staring at the stars. He had made his choice. He didn't know who she was or what danger she brought. But he knew one thing: he couldn't leave her. His console beeped suddenly, a warning. A new message flooded the system, written in Galactic Standard. "Wanted, high-priority fugitive." It read. A picture loaded on the screen, her face, eyes wide and frightened. Dead or alive. 1 million credits. Ryan leaned back slowly, his heart sinking. What had he just brought onto his ship? He looked back through the door toward the medbay. The girl slept peacefully, her hands curled near her face like a child. He whispered to himself, "What are you, little one?" But deep down, he already knew the answer. She wasn't just a helpless girl. She was something more, something the galaxy wanted gone. And now, he was the only one standing between her and the people who wanted her dead. He could still turn her in, take the credits, and walk away free. But as he remembered her whisper, "Please, mercy," he felt something shift inside him. He wasn't going to give her up. Not now. not ever. And somewhere far beyond the stars, someone had just realized the girl wasn't dead. She was with a human, and everything was about to change. She doesn't know why they're after her. The girl woke up with a gasp, eyes wide, body tense, as if expecting pain, but all she saw was a soft ceiling, a blinking light and warm air on her face. She blinked twice, sat up slowly, and looked around the room. Metal walls, a humming machine beside her, and a soft blanket wrapped around her shoulders. It was not a prison, not a lab, not the cold darkness. She remembered Captain Ryan walked in with a cup of warm broth, steam rising from it. She tensed again, watching every move he made, but he didn't come close. He placed the cup on the table beside the bed, then backed away with his hands up. "I made this for you," he said gently. "It's food, safe, warm." She looked at the cup, then at him, her body still shaking. Ryan didn't push her, just stood nearby, waiting. After a long silence, she reached for the cup with trembling hands. She sipped slowly, her eyes never leaving his face. It was the first real food she'd had in days, maybe weeks. Ryan smiled and sat on a crate, still keeping his distance. "What's your name?" he asked softly. "Do you remember?" She looked down, her lips moving soundlessly, then whispered, "Leary." He nodded. "Leary. That's a beautiful name." She held the cup with both hands, trying to understand his tone. It wasn't angry, it wasn't cold, it was gentle. No one had ever spoken to her like that before. Suddenly, the ship's alarm beeped again, breaking the calm. Ryan stood quickly, tapping the console screen beside him. It was another bounty. Notice this time updated, more urgent. Her picture now had a red banner. Approach with extreme caution. Ryan frowned, then turned to look at her. She was watching the screen too, and her face turned pale. Tears welled in her eyes as she whispered, "Why do they want me?" Ryan stepped closer, crouched in front of her, and looked into her glowing eyes. "I was hoping you could tell me," he said, "but it's okay if you don't remember." Leary shook her head, voice trembling. "I didn't hurt anyone. I just ran." "From where?" Ryan asked. "What were you running from?" Her body stiffened again, as if her mind had slammed into a wall. She clutched her head, breathing fast. White walls, sharp lights, voices shouting, pain, so much pain. Ryan reached out slowly. Touching her shoulder, she flinched, then relaxed slightly. "You're safe here," he said. "I promise." But even he didn't fully believe it. Out in space, someone wanted this girl silenced. And badly. Ryan turned back to the console and accessed the bounty net. The data said Leary was biologically unstable, potentially weaponized, and not to be trusted. He looked at her, again curled up, shaking, frightened, and felt rage building in his chest. She was just a girl, maybe 16 in human years, barely surviving. There was no weapon in her hands, no hatred in her eyes, just fear. Leary looked at him and asked, "What are you going to do with me?" Ryan didn't answer right away. He had no plan, no backup, no allies. But he made a choice in that moment. "I'm going to protect you," he said, voice firm. "Until we find out the truth." Leary blinked, stunned, then lowered her head and whispered, "Why?" He smiled a little, "Because someone has to." She leaned back against the wall, holding the blanket tight. Her glowing eyes watched him, not with fear now, but with curiosity. She had never met a human before, but everything about him confused her. He gave instead of taking, listened instead of commanding, helped without asking for anything in return. Was this what kindness was? She wasn't sure if she could trust it yet, but she wanted to. Later that day, as the ship drifted through the quiet edge of the sector, Leary sat in the cockpit beside Ryan, wrapped in a hoodie he had given her. She looked at the stars, then at him, and asked, "Do humans lie too?" Ryan glanced at her, surprised. "Sometimes, yeah," she nodded. "But you haven't," he smiled. "I'm trying not to." She looked at her hands and whispered, "Then I will try to." That simple sentence struck him more than any weapon ever had. For the first time, someone believed in him, but somewhere far away. A cold figure watched the tracking screen. "The girl is alive," he said to his comms. "She is with a human." The voice on the other end replied, "Send everyone. Burn every path. No one touches her except me." Kindness that confuses the galaxy. Asterisk. Leary sat cross-legged on the soft floor mat of Ryan's ship. Staring at a small piece of bread in her hands, she turned it slowly, sniffed it, poked it, then finally took a tiny bite. Her face lit up in surprise. And she looked at Ryan as if he'd just handed her a treasure. "You like it?" he asked with a smile, leaning on the nearby table. She nodded fast, cheeks puffed with the bite. Then whispered, "It's warm." Ryan chuckled softly. "It's just food." Nothing special, but to Leary, it was more than that. To her, warm food wasn't common. It wasn't safe. It wasn't given freely. She kept glancing around the room, as if waiting for someone to hit her, yell at her, or take the bread back, but no one did. Ryan simply poured her a cup of sweet fruit juice and slid it across the table. "No tricks," he said gently. "Just eat." She stared at the cup, then him, then slowly took a sip. Her body relaxed, but her mind was racing. Why was he doing this? What did he want from her? Aliens never gave her anything without taking twice as much in return. Kindness was just another tool, a lie wrapped in a smile. But this human, he was different. He didn't ask questions she couldn't answer. He didn't grab her when she froze. He didn't look at her like she was a problem or a monster. He just helped. As days passed, she began to change. Her wounds healed, her breathing slowed. Her hands stopped shaking. She even laughed once when Ryan slipped and spilled soup on himself. He blinked in surprise at the sound, but smiled with pride. "That's a good sound," he said, wiping his shirt. "We should hear it more." Leary lowered her head shyly, but a tiny smile stayed on her lips. At night, they would sit in the cockpit and stare at the stars. Ryan played soft music, something old and human, full of slow notes and warm tones. Leary didn't understand the words, but she felt them. She leaned her head on the wall and whispered, "Is this what freedom feels like?" Ryan looked at her, not sure how to answer. "Maybe," he said, "but we're not there yet." Meanwhile, out in the galaxy, rumors spread. A human had taken in the most wanted girl in the quadrant. But instead of turning her in, he fed her, sheltered her, spoke kindly to her. Alien bounty hunters, smugglers, and mercenaries were confused. Humans were supposed to be cold, dangerous, only loyal to profit or pride. But this Ryan Carter, was doing the unthinkable. He was protecting her like family. Some called him mad, others called him noble. But everyone agreed, whatever his reason, the galaxy wouldn't forgive him. One night, Leary sat with Ryan on the lower deck, watching him fix a broken drone. "Why are your hands so steady?" she asked. Ryan glanced at her. Years of practice. She nodded, then touched her own fingers. "Mine were trained to steal, to open locks, to crawl through tunnels." She looked away, her voice barely a whisper. "I never had something to fix." Ryan paused, then handed her a tool. "Want to try?" he asked. "This one's easy." Leary blinked in surprise, then slowly reached out. Her hands shook a little, but she followed his instructions. Piece by piece, the drone began to take shape. Her eyes sparkled not from fear, but from pride. "I did it," she asked in disbelief. Ryan nodded. "You did great." Leary smiled again, this time a little wider. In that moment, the past didn't matter. She wasn't a fugitive, a lab subject, or a threat. She was just a girl fixing a drone with a kind human. By her side, but far away, in a dark meeting room, high-ranking officers of a powerful alien syndicate watched the footage. One slammed a fist on the table. "He's making her look innocent," the alien growled. "We can't allow that." Another nodded. "If she speaks, if she remembers everything, we're finished." They activated a tracking beacon hidden deep in her old pod's wreckage. "Find them," the leader snarled. "Kill the human if needed. But bring her back alive." Back on the ship, Leary sat quietly, looking at her reflection in the glass. "Ryan," she said softly, "what if I'm really dangerous?" Ryan stood behind her and said, "Then I'll help you control it." She turned to him slowly, eyes filled with confusion. "Why?" He answered without hesitation, "Because someone saw me once, when I was broken, and helped me stand again." Leary stared at him for a long moment, then whispered, "Then maybe I can stand to asterisk the girl who should not exist in third-person style." Asterisk Ryan stood in the center of his ship's control room, staring at a blinking message on his console. It came from a dead channel, one not used in years, encrypted, scrambled, ancient, marked with an old rebel science code from the war. He had no allies left in that world, but the message carried his name. He opened it carefully, eyes narrowing as lines of code scrolled across the screen. At the end, a voice spoke. "Old and weak. If you're seeing this, Captain Ryan Carter, then you've found her," the voice said. Crackling through the speakers, "You found the last piece we couldn't protect." Ryan turned to look at Leary, who was sitting nearby, folding wires and trying to smile as she played with the drone she helped repair. She didn't know she had just become the center of something far bigger than either of them. "She's not a fugitive." The voice continued. "She's the result of Project Oryx, our last hope against extinction. Created in silence, erased in fire." Leary paused as she heard her name in the recording. Her hands stopped moving. Her breath caught in her throat. She looked up at Ryan, confused and afraid. "What is Project Oryx?" she whispered. Ryan didn't answer right away. He let the message finish. "They came for her because she carries a code," the voice said, "a rare genetic key that can bring life or death, peace or destruction, depending on who holds it." The message ended with one final warning: "If she remembers everything, they will come." The console went dark. Silence filled the room. Leary stood slowly, backing away, her hands trembling again. "I'm not a person," she whispered. "I'm a weapon." "No," Ryan said firmly, stepping toward her. "You're not." "You heard the voice," she cried, tears filling her eyes. "I was made in a lab. I was a project, not a girl." Ryan gently held her shoulders, forcing her to look into his eyes. "I don't care what they called you," he said. "You laugh, you cry, you dream that makes you real. But what if I break?" she asked, voice cracking. "What if I hurt you?" "Then I'll be there to stop it," Ryan said, "and help you stand again." Leary collapsed into his arms, sobbing, her whole body shaking. She didn't want to be special. She just wanted to be safe. Ryan held her close, silently swearing to protect her, even from herself. Later that night, she sat in the medbay, staring at the mirror. She touched her glowing skin, traced the faint lines along her arms, lines she hadn't noticed before. Symbols began to appear, pulsing softly with golden light. They felt familiar, like a memory hiding just out of reach. She closed her eyes, trying to pull them forward. Suddenly, flashes hit her mind-white rooms, metal tables, tubes in her arms, alien scientists watching her scream, coaxing codes into her body, watching her glow, measuring fear, pain, and silence. She screamed and fell backward, knocking over the chair. Ryan ran into the room, grabbing her before she hit the floor. "Leary," he shouted. "What's happening?" She gasped for air, eyes wide, hands gripping his arms like lifelines. "I remember," she whispered. "They made me from pieces. Pieces of others. Others who died." Ryan didn't know what to say. She looked at him with wild eyes. "They called me the key, the final attempt. They said if I failed, there would be no more tries." Ryan helped her to the bed and wrapped a blanket around her. "You didn't fail," he said. "You survived." She stared at the ceiling, her voice distant. "They burned the lab, erased the data. But I escaped." Ryan nodded. "And now they want you back." She turned her head toward him slowly. "They'll kill you to get me." He leaned forward, eyes fierce. "Then they'll have to try hard for the next few hours." Ryan worked in silence, strengthening the ship's defenses, changing routes, and jamming tracking frequencies. But he knew it wasn't enough, if the girl was truly what? The message said, then powerful forces were already coming. Leary watched him from the hallway, holding a cup of warm juice. She was still scared. But something inside her had shifted for the first time. She didn't want to run. She wanted to fight, not because she was made to, but because Ryan believed she could choose. That night, as the stars drifted outside the ship, Leary stood beside him in the cockpit and whispered, "If I'm the key, then maybe I can open something better." Ryan looked at her, proud and calm. "You already have," he said. "You opened my heart." The trap asterisk, the market world of Virolaning, was filled with sound, color, and movement. Alien traders shouted across narrow paths, food stalls steamed with strange spices, and music played from floating speakers that hovered above the crowd. To most, it was a place of life, business, and forgettable noise. To Ryan, it was danger wrapped in decoration. He walked slowly, scanning faces, eyes, and hands, one palm resting near his sidearm. Leary walked beside him in a hooded cloak, head low, fingers tightly clutching his sleeve like a child afraid of being left behind. Her heart beat fast, not from the noise, but from something deeper. Something wrong, the world felt. Too calm to many people, but no chaos, no arguing, no accidents. It felt like they were being watched. "Just grab the med supplies," Ryan whispered. "In and out, 10 minutes." Leary nodded, her eyes glowing faintly under the hood. They entered a supply stall run by a four-armed merchant who barely looked up. "It's a package for Carter," Ryan said, tossing a chip onto the counter. The merchant grabbed it without a word, handed over a black medical case, and motioned toward the exit as they turned to leave. Leary froze, her senses flared, and something deep in her memory screamed. Too quiet, too clean, too perfect. She grabbed Ryan's wrist, her voice a whisper. "We're in a trap." He didn't question it, just moved. Seconds later, the crowd shifted, and the illusion broke. Tall, armored aliens stepped from behind stalls, weapons hidden in food carts and crates. A deep voice echoed through a nearby speaker. "Human Ryan Carter. You were ordered to surrender the subject immediately." Leary backed away, panic rising, hands glowing. Ryan stepped in front of her, gun raised. "Over my dead body," he growled. The crowd scattered in every direction, and in the blink of an eye, the marketplace became a battlefield. Blaster shots tore through fruit stands. Smoke filled the air, and Ryan fired with calm precision. Leary crouched behind a broken crate, eyes wide, her hands glowing brighter than ever before. But she didn't attack. She was afraid of what might happen if she did. One wrong move, and she might become the weapon they feared. She didn't want that. She didn't want to hurt anyone. A mercenary with sharp blue armor charged toward her. Weapon raised, she screamed. Shielding her face butt, Ryan slammed into the attacker. Knocking him back with his shoulder, he turned, blood on his forehead, and shouted, "Run, Leary, now." She hesitated, heart torn in two. Ryan fired again, covering her, and she turned to run, but something inside her snapped. She stopped mid-step, clenched her fists and screamed not in fear, but in defiance. A wave of light exploded from her body. Time slowed. Just for a moment, the attackers froze, caught mid-motion, eyes wide in shock. Ryan dropped to one knee, shielded from the wave by the very energy she released. Leary collapsed to the ground, gasping, eyes fading back to normal. The market was silent again, weapons offline, soldiers unconscious, and even the air felt still. Ryan rushed to her side, lifting her gently. "You okay?" "Huh?" he asked, brushing hair from her face. She nodded weakly. I didn't destroy them." "No," he said, voice proud and full of awe. "You protected us." He carried her back to the ship under cover of shadows, using back alleys and blocked signal paths. Once on board, the ship lifted off quickly, leaving the trap world behind. In the medbay, Ryan cleaned her wounds and sat beside her. She looked up, eyes tired but calm. "I didn't run," she whispered. "Not this time." Ryan took her hand. "You were brilliant." "But I'm scared of what?" "I did," she said. "What if next time I can't stop it?" "Then I'll stop you," Ryan replied softly. "Not because I fear you, but because I believe in you." Leary closed her eyes, resting the hum of the ship, lulling her to sleep. Ryan stood and walked back to the console, face hardening. This wasn't a random ambush. Someone had known their location, their timing, their plan. He checked the systems again, and his eyes narrowed. A tracking signal node, buried deep in the escape pod wreckage, had been active the whole time. He slammed his fist on the console. "They let us into this," he whispered. "And they'll try again." He turned toward the medbay, looking at Leary, sleeping peacefully. They wanted a weapon, a project, a prisoner. But what they were getting instead was a girl who chose to fight and a human who chose to stay, no matter the cost. The gift no one expected. Ryan had been injured before: burns, broken ribs, a bullet through the leg during the war. But nothing felt like this. The wound on his side was deep, bleeding through his shirt and pulsing with something cold, not just pain. He leaned against the corridor wall of the dust runner, dragging himself toward the medbay. Each step felt heavier, his vision swimming. Behind him, Leary ran barefoot, her hood falling back, her silver hair glowing brighter with each step. "Ryan!" she cried, her voice breaking. "You're bleeding." Too much. He collapsed at the door, and she caught him just before his head hit the floor. "Stay with me," she whispered, lifting him with shaking arms. "Please, stay awake." He tried to smile. Blood at the corner of his mouth. "Just a scratch." "Liar," she said. Tears already falling. "You saved me again, and now you're dying." Ryan's hand trembled as it reached for hers. "Worth it," he whispered. "Always worth it." She dragged him onto the medbed, the ship's AI activating emergency scans. "Critical. Organ damage detected," the voice said calmly. "Internal hemorrhaging." Leary looked down at him, her hands glowing again, brighter than ever before. Her skin lit up with symbols, golden and ancient, the same ones from her visions. "I don't know what I am," she whispered, "but I'm not letting you go." She placed her hands over the Sa-Sa move. The wound, her eyes glowing white, a deep hum filled the air. The lights on the ship flickered, and the console screens glitched. Her voice spoke. But it wasn't just hers. There were echoes of others, memories, souls buried deep inside her. "We were made to destroy, but one of us chose to heal." Ryan's body arched slightly. His mouth opened in a silent gasp. Then everything went still. Her glow faded. The symbols vanished, and Leary collapsed beside him, unconscious. The med scanner beeped softly. "Vitals stable," it said. "Wound closed." Ryan's eyes opened slowly, his breath steady. He looked down and touched his side. No blood. just smooth skin and a faint warmth. He turned to Leary, lying beside him, pale and barely breathing. He pulled her close, wrapped the blanket around her, and held her like something sacred. "You gave me your strength," he whispered. "You nearly gave everything." When Leary woke hours later, she saw him sitting at her side, arms crossed, waiting. She smiled weakly. "You're okay?" He nodded, eyes misty. "Because of you." She sat up slowly, rubbing her eyes. "I saw things. People inside me. Pieces of who I was made from." Ryan leaned closer. "Listening, there was one," she said softly. "A healer. She gave her life to protect her people, and I think her memory stayed inside me." "Maybe you're all of them," Ryan said. "The parts they took. They didn't make a weapon. They made a soul." Leary looked at her glowing hands, then closed them. "I didn't know I could save," she whispered. "I thought I was only built to destroy." "Now you know," Ryan said, "and so will everyone else." Suddenly, a soft beep came from the console. Ryan stood, checked the signal, and frowned. "A transmission is being broadcast across public channels," the AI reported. "Source unknown, encrypted, spreading fast." He tapped the screen, and a video played. It showed the moment in the market. Leary standing in front of Ryan, light bursting from her body. The attackers frozen, the human falling, then a second clip. Leary healing him, her face glowing, her voice shaking. The galaxy had seen her not as a monster, but as a protector, a girl who risked her life to save a human across different systems. People began to speak. "She's not what they said," someone whispered. "She's a miracle." Another voice added. The bounty boards started to shift. Her photo no longer said "kill on sight," but now flickered between statuses. Some called for her protection, others still demanded her return. But something had changed. The galaxy no longer saw her the same way, and all because one human refused to give her up. Leary sat quietly, overwhelmed. "They'll still come for us," she said. "Won't they?" "Yes," Ryan replied. "But now they'll have to face the truth first." She looked at him, then reached for his hand for the first time. "I feel like I'm not running anymore." Ryan smiled, squeezing her fingers gently. "That's because you're finally standing." The one who gave her wings, the stars outside the dust runner, moved slowly. Like distant lanterns in the black sky, Leary stood at the front window of the cockpit, her reflection soft in the glass, her silver hair tied loosely behind her back. She was calm, but not at peace. Her glow was faint now, quiet not from weakness, but choice. The galaxy knew her name now, not as a weapon, not as a fugitive, but as a girl who chose to save a human. And that truth had shaken the stars more than any war. Behind her, Ryan stepped in, holding a worn data chip. "Final message is ready," he said. "Whenever you are." Leary turned to him, her eyes warm but serious. "I want them to hear it in my voice," she whispered. "Not yours, not theirs, mine." Ryan nodded and handed her the chip. She placed it in the console, tapped a few buttons, and waited for the red light to blink. Then she spoke, her voice soft, slow, every word chosen with care. "My name is Leary," she said. "You may have heard other names for me, but this one is mine. I was made by hands that feared what I could become. I lived most of my life in shadows, running from people who never looked into my eyes, only my design, but one person did look, and he didn't run. He didn't ask what I was, he asked how I felt." She paused, her breath shaking. "I've been called a weapon, a mistake, a ghost of dead science, but I know now I'm something else. I'm not just memory and power, I'm choice. I'm voice, I'm alive, and I forgive you." There was silence in the cockpit. The console light blinked again, and the message began to spread, from station to station, world to world. Her voice echoed through space. It made some cry, made others furious. But most simply, listened. Ryan leaned on the wall, arms crossed, watching her. You meant every word. He said quietly. I did, she answered, because you gave me the right to choose. Moments later, a transmission came in not from enemies, but allies, small worlds, hidden communities, old rebel contacts. They were all offering safe harbor. People were waking up, realizing the lie they had been fed, but the old powers weren't quiet. The ones who built her still hunted her, still feared her, still wanted to erase their failure. A message flashed on Ryan's console, urgent and cold. Stand down, deliver the asset, or be destroyed. Ryan didn't flinch, didn't even blink. He tapped the reply key and simply wrote, "She's not your asset. She's not yours at all." Then he deleted the message. Leary stood behind him and placed a hand on his back. Where will we go now? She asked. Wherever you want, he replied. You're not running anymore, remember? She smiled softly, then looked out the window again. There's a planet near the edge, she said. Old forests, quiet skies. No cities, no chains. Perfect. Ryan said, let's make that home, as the ship jumped into lightspeed. Leary looked down at the drone she had helped repair weeks ago. She reached inside, pulled out a tiny flower she had hidden through a wild blossom from the Virulanine market. It had somehow survived the chaos. Like her, she placed it on the dashboard, letting it glow in the soft light. For once, her hands weren't trembling. For once, her heart didn't fear what came next. She turned to Ryan, her voice quiet, almost sacred. In my language, she said, we have no word for hero, but we have one for a soul who protects another until they find their wings. She stepped closer, placed a hand on his chest, right above his heart, and whispered the word, Shalon. Ryan smiled, even though he didn't understand it fully. What does that mean? He asked. She leaned her head on his shoulder and said, it means you gave me the sky.